My name is Sam Shihab, and with me is my colleague Brian Burke. We're going to be talking about an important topic today, green card wastage, who's working for you. Obviously, with the pandemic, a lot has been happening, and this is on everybody's mind, and it's on our mind as well. Also, we're going to be taking your questions today. So remember, the sooner you send those questions, the sooner we can get to them for you and answer them as well. And in terms of current events, we're going to also be talking about the new development COVID-19 requirement for the medical examination and its impact on your medical examination and green card application. And that's something that we're going to be discussing today as well. But without further delay, green card wastage. Who's working for you? What's the solution? Are we going to be able to fix it? What is wastage, Brian?
You know, Sam, I'm going to talk about this like the audience doesn't totally know what we're talking about already. So every year, the government allocates green cards, available green cards across various categories. And at the end of every fiscal year, the government's fiscal year ending at the end of September, September 30th, the green cards that go unused in a particular category are wasted. They're no longer available. And the sort of crisis we're in right now is that due to the massive underuse of green cards in the family-based categories in last year, there's a massive availability of employment-based green cards this year. But the problem is that USCIS has a lack of bandwidth to process them. So, you know, if USCIS doesn't approve those employment-based green cards, they'll be lost. And all of the good folks out there who've been waiting for, 10 years and have, last year got the great opportunity to file for a green card might not see much benefit if the government just keeps on processing at their lowly pace.
And when we talk wastage, is this a new phenomenon?
No, sir. I mean, the talk about it is really one of the last, 6 months, but if you go back and look at the numbers over the last, 30 years is really when we talk about, there's tons of green cards wasted. And why is it infuriating? Well, any green card wasted under the law is upsetting to me. But when green cards get wasted, that's one more person out there that is waiting longer to get their green card. And it just sort of snowballs,
Yep. So to kind of explain to you what is happening is that there is a numerical limitation of visas for family-based and employment-based. And also there is a complicated way to move them around with intention to not waste those green cards. And every year there is a number that's issued. 140,000 to 126,000 for employment and family cases respectively. And then they move around. If they're unused in one category, they move them around to the next category. And every year, USCIS and the State Department fail to complete the government's mandate in using up all the green cards. And then the year ends, and these are wasted. And year in and year out, people never made a big issue about it. But the cumulative impact is massive. And we're going to be sharing with you some numbers on that, Brian. The cumulative effect is fantastically massive.
Yeah, I mean, enough to what we're looking at now is enough to. It's enough. I mean, we have the numbers.
Yeah.
Wanna take a look?
Yeah, let's do some number look, and let's look at that.
Let's see what we got. So that is the. Sam, we were talking about those numbers, but there's other numbers that are important too.
Okay.
The size of the backlog, and I mentioned them just because we happen to have them up here. We know the most backlog country there is India, and this is up through fiscal year 2021, I believe. That's the backlog. That's the nasty number. EB2, EB3 for India, backlog of 741,000, almost 750,000 people backlogged.
And then you have wastage.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. So you have a backlog, and then you have a wastage, and there's nobody doing anything about it. Let's look at the wastage numbers.
Yes.
If you
the wastage numbers, keep that 741,000 in mind. See where the wastage numbers are.
So this chart is a chart that is every year.
Yeah.
And we're going to scroll down here. I don't know if you can make it a little bit bigger, and then we'll scroll it up. I'm not sure if people can see it.
Let's make it a
Here
little
you
bit
go.
bigger.
Yeah, that's good. That fills the screen. So, for example, in 1992, there were 26,000 green card wasted between employment-based and family-based. And then, for example, if you look at 1995, you have 58,694 green card wasted. And if you look at the total green card wasted in both employment application and family-based application, we're looking at close to 1 million wasted green cards in the since 1992, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. There's a couple ways to calculate it here, which we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Right, but that number is the straightforward number.
Yeah, the
946.99.
Yeah, 940,699. So
that's 1 million green card failing to allocate 1 million green card since 1992.
So going back to this other number here, that is the entire India backlog of 741,000, plus an extra 200,000 just for gravy, huh?
Yes. So we're jumping numbers here and confusing people, but Brian, this is a serious failure of administrative responsibility at a consistent, persistent, and massive in nature that is just simply getting worse every year.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm an immigration attorney. I want those 900 some odd thousand green cards.
What would happen to your business if you don't get 940,000 green card filed by your client? You will be criminally charged as a lawyer, right?
If I'm a lawyer who individually took on 940,000 green cards, well, that's a challenge in and of itself.
But think about it.
But yeah,
you miss one green card as an immigration lawyer,
you're toast.
You're toast. And the government has wasted 940,000 green cards since 1992 consistently, and that's not counting 2021.
Yeah,
that's not counting 2021.
What they're going to waste.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the numbers are not on the screen, but the government this year have processed approximately 70,000 green card adjustments. The family-based by itself is 140,000, not counting the additional 100,000. The last quarter, historically, they kind of pick it up and they go aggressive, but to jump from 70,000 green cards to the required about 170,000, 140 plus 240,000 green card approval. So if you do the math, that's a little over 100,000 is incredible. It's just not even possible.
Well, Sam, there's no chance of them. Wastage is a foregone conclusion at this. At least using up all the green cards that are available for this year before September 30th. It's not going to happen. Yeah. It's impossible.
And we must hold the agency accountable. We must hold the agency accountable, and we must correct that because it cannot continue. It's just not possible for our country. Yeah. I mean, how can we bring the most talented people to the U.S. when we're just not able to do the basic administrative action of approving a green card?
Yeah, we were looking at the numbers, the per capita immigration, U.S. versus other countries around the world. Less people for the population immigrate to the United States as it is, and maybe if you fix this issue, maybe we'd be more competitive across the planet with all the other countries.
We're ranked, I don't know what the number 10th or 11th in the world in the immigration per capita, with Europe, most of Europe ahead of us. The only countries are behind us, i.e. they allow immigration for less than us per capita, is Mexico, Israel, Japan.
Yeah.
And that's it.
It was South Korea on the list. Yeah. But, I mean, I'm going to get out the American flag and start waving behind me, Sam. It's not what we're about. We're the country of immigrants. We're supposed to be, pulling that lever, getting these things approved, and it's not. It bothers me.
Canada allows more. England allows more. Italy allows more. Australia allows more. per capita than the U.S.
I
And
mean,
yet we fail to do what the Congress has mandated.
it's not just about, waving flag behind me, the melting pot, that America is. It's international competition and international talent. You want to bring the best and brightest to the country. You actually have to bring the best and brightest to the country. You have to prove their cases.
Yes.
So
where do we go from here?
Well,
so 3 potential solutions that we're going to be looking at today. We're going to talk about what can the executive branch do, what can the judicial branch do, and what can the legislative branch do.
Yeah, all 3 of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And each one have their own option that can resolve that. I am of a believer that it will be resolved. It may not be resolved this year, but it will be resolved.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the executive branch, we're talking about the Biden administration, USCIS leadership. What can they do to fix this embarrassing problem? Let's talk about that first.
Okay.
Executive action, there's history behind it,
Yeah.
positive history to allow for solution.
Yeah. In terms of, what kind of, what you can compare it to. It's possible for them to change the way they allocate green cards, essentially. And there's precedent in, say, the H-1B visa program. When you file an H-1B cap case, they don't officially, grant you that number until the case has been approved. But they set that number aside for you when you file the case.
5 days into filing your H-1B, we're filing H-1B, they say the cap has been reached, but they haven't approved a single case.
Yeah.
So they have allocated an H-1B number for every filed case. Every time, once they cash a check, they say, we're going to set this number aside. So why do they do it the reverse for green cards?
That's how they do it. Precedent, it's how they've done it.
It has failed, obviously.
Yeah, it's, it's to give the government some credit. They tried to make it a little bit better. That's the whole reason why the dates for filing for the visa bulletin exist, to try to allow people to file their green cards before, there are priority dates available. What I'm getting at here, folks, is that, the final action dates is when you're eligible to receive a green card. However, about 2014 or 15 or so, the Department of State has created this concept of dates for filing for green cards, so they could give an opportunity to people to file for their green cards before that final action date is current. Those dates of filing have about a 6 to 8 month outlook, in that they file 6 to 8 months before your case is ready to be approved, meaning all the processing will be done, and you'll be eligible and you'll get that green card as soon as your priority date is current. So they are aware of this issue, but it's still not, that solution is no longer working because, folks out there, raise your hand if you have a current final action priority date and your green card's approved. Yeah. It's not happening.
Yeah. And what have they done in the last 6 months? They failed to cash the checks until 3 or 4 months later. They failed to send receipt notices until 3 or 4 months later. They couldn't even process cases in time, let alone allocate a visa. So the failure of the agency was monumental. But what can they do? I think they have to, number one, recognize that this issue, number one, they have to recognize that they have failed.
Yeah.
Because if you don't recognize that you have failed, you can't fix it. If they think they're doing a good job and they're high-fiving each other doing a good job, you cannot even get to the second point, is how to fix it.
Yeah, in terms of, it's a great question. Have they recognized that failure? Because we know we're out there right now. They are accelerating as much as they can to try to get as many of these approved before the end of the fiscal year as possible. Yeah. I open the mail around here, and I can tell you, I'm seeing more and more green card approvals. Great, but September begins 2 days from now. They're gonna have to fill up our mailbox with 485 approval notices in order to make me happy.
Yeah, it has to be. They have to cancel all the interviews. They have to cancel all the interviews. They have to allocate. You could allocate the visas now.
Yeah.
allocate it now and just say we've allocated these visas now, and then approve them later?
Yeah. So what can the real answer is what can they do? It's basically they instead of waiting till the very last second to go to the computer, push that button, allocate a visa, they do it when they get the case.
Yeah. There is two precedences that I'm aware of in which that change in allocations happened. The first one is in 2007 when everything became current. What they wanted to do is to kind of push the State Department to revise their visa bulletin. What they've done is they went to the computer and they called all the visas number immediately, instantaneously. So they can do that. They have fingers and there's a keyboard and they can just claim the numbers, which they did. The other one is the Cuban Adjustment Act. Back in the 60s, they've granted green card in a retroactive effect for 30 months retroactive effect. So they were able to reach back to visa availabilities in prior years and allocate them to the Western Hemisphere green card issuance. And they can do that right now, Brian. They can go back and say, don't worry, we have made an administrative decision that we are going to continue to allocate these visas next year.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, oh no, Congress said this, you've done it before, what can you not do it now?
Yeah, and based upon everything I've been reading, it's also, so one, you change the way you allocate your green cards, you get the case, you set that green card aside, and the end of the fiscal year, who cares? The green card's already allocated. It's also in theory, the executive branch can go back and get some of the ones they've wasted. That's been a proposal, Sam. So the executive branch, everybody underneath the president, they can get their act together and they say, we messed this up a little bit. We can fix this by changing the way we allocate our green cards.
Yeah. So in term of that, okay, they can also claim green cards that has been wasted as far back as 15 years. They can claim it now.
Yeah.
On an executive level, say, there could be an executive proclamation issued by the president, say, you will reclaim your visas. We are going to correct our failure. And if we probably do not have that chart, but if we go back to that first chart, it may not be helpful to look at it. But there's 3 ways to calculate these green cards.
Let's go to the chart. Yeah.
Yes, I'm not sure. Yes.
So there's the number right there. Because how many visas you can get back depends on how you calculate this. And we mentioned earlier one proposal for 940,000. But just by executive order alone, it's estimated that the president can claim back 231,000 and some odd green cards.
By the way, a lot of this information that we would like to give proper attribution to the Niskanen Center. They issued a fantastic report called Stop the Incinerator.
Yeah, a fun read for an immigration lawyer.
It's a great report. It was a deep dive into this issue, and we really want to let everybody know that a lot of what we're presenting is coming from that report. It's called The High Cost of Green Card Slots Going Unused and the Benefit of Recapturing Them. In this report, they conclude that the dollars, the benefit in dollars, is incredible. And they, by the way, when they've done the calculation, they only calculated the dollar benefit to those who came into the U.S. after the green card approval and did not calculate the dollar benefit for those H-1B workers. So it was extremely conservative analysis, and the financial benefit was huge for the economy. Be that as it may, so there's 3 ways to calculate recapture.
Yeah.
Conservative, straightforward, and then the third one is really not crazy. Not a crazy one. So the 231,584,000 that you're seeing here, I don't know if you see that number.
231, right near my mouse cursor there,
yes.
584.
So that number is calculated by the Ombudsman, USCIS Ombudsman, that looked at all the green card wasted in an extremely conservative calculation and not counting any of the visas that overflow from the family into the employment. So this is an extremely conservative number that if you can go back since 1992, I think, until now, that you're going to be able to capture 231,000. They can do that by executive action alone, and forget about the 100,000 that we've got.
So executive action, president signs an executive order, you can get back arguably 231 some odd thousand green cards lost over the last 30 years. Sam, why doesn't he do it?
Because he's not focused on it. Because honestly, you don't need a proclamation. I think USCIS can come out and say, we've looked at it, we've wasted that many visas, we are going to reclaim them.
Yeah,
we're going to allocate them now, and we're going to treat them like we do the H-1B visa. Allocate them at the time we get the check, a visa number is allocated.
Yeah,
and reallocate them later. So when you cross the fiscal year.
Well, I do have a thought about that. Why can't, obviously there's not much focus on it right now, and as we move into the legislative, the president does have a legislative plan for that as well, which has got to be part of his focus. But
yes.
The problem with executive actions is, as soon as you have an executive action, somebody can start challenging you in court as to its legality.
Let them challenge in court. Let them challenge it in court. We welcome that.
Yeah. I'd rather have the visa bulletin, 5, 6, 10 years ahead of where it is right now, and all those people file the cases, and let the,
Yes. Yeah. So the executive action can fix this by having some courage to step up and say, we're fixing it, and we don't need to go to Congress. We don't need to deal with litigation, and we can come in and hand right now the employment base 231,000, which will be a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, it's kind of a drop in the bucket, but that's heck, that's not even a drop in the bucket. That's a a third of the Indian backlog. That's not too shabby. That's knocks several years off the backlog, and I'd like that too.
Yes. So that's the executive solution.
Yeah.
And what is the next one that we want to talk about?
We're going through the branches of government. It's legislative action. It's that both houses of Congress come up with a bill and convince the president to sign it.
So the exciting one is the one that President Biden proposed, and in that one,
it's the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. That's his pet.
In that one, if it is adopted as is, it will create 940,699 additional green cards.
There's that number there. So again, depending on how you calculate the unutilized green cards, the wasted green cards, President Biden's it's been introduced in both houses of Congress. His bill would provide for getting back 940,000 lost green cards.
Yes.
Awesome. Eliminates that India backlog. I mean, and that is the backlog really. That is, I mean, there's China has a backlog, but it's pales in comparison.
And we're not creating new green cards. We're just saying
just the ones that he used.
We're just implementing congressional intent for the last 20 years.
I mean, exactly. And this is, as an immigration attorney, this is something that's has been all. I mean, I'm always paranoid about government not doing their job properly. H-1B visa program, Sam, do you believe they allocate every H-1B visa they're supposed to?
Never.
Never. I believe it.
And they never admit to it.
I believe it's slightly more now that they have an electronic registration system. But, let's go back to all those other years. Fat chance. And Department of State, the whole visa bulletin system, even more shrouded in secrecy than that system.
And what's the other legislative? So we have the Biden legislation, which is the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Yeah.
It recaptured the 940,699 lost forever green card. 2-year 2020, and you can add 2021, and that's another 150,000. So that will cross 1 million or 1,000,001 green cards. That if that is adopted, that will happen. And remember, folks, we are falling so far behind in approving green cards that we are number 10 or 12 in the world in terms of immigration per capita. Most of Europe immigrate more people per capita. Most Western Hemisphere countries more visa per capita than the U.S., and that fixes the problem.
Sam, you talked about just you're talking about everybody else doing more and more. It just turned the gears in my mind. You know what? So the number is always getting higher. How is this? That's why somebody has to do something about this. There has to be some sort of legislation because the number is always getting higher. It's never does anybody say, "Oh, the immigrant visa backlog for India went down." It doesn't happen. It's unsustainable.
Right.
Well,
not only that. I mean, we just looked at the chart. The linear projection is 85 years.
85 years, yeah.
For somebody who filed a green card today to get their green card, they will retire and leave the country and never get the green card.
No, I was reading data from somewhere where they take into account they count how long it would take, but they also have to account for the fact a bunch of people will die before they get their green card, and it's an eye-watering, upsetting statistic.
No question. The second one, there is an act proposed in Congress called the Eagle Act, and the Eagle Act is one that proposes to taper down or remove the per country limitation of 7%.
Yeah, it's the way the rules are right now, no country can take more than 7% of the allocation, and over the course of I think it's over several years, it tapers that down. So it basically slowly knocks out that India backlog by getting rid of that
Yes.
percentage allocation.
Yes.
Nothing.
That's a step in the right direction, but obviously the Biden solution is superior to that one.
Well, yeah, and in terms of what again, I think of the politics of these things. Who's going to there's the president's plan or some. This is from a couple members of the House, as I recall, whose plan's going to take precedent. Which I like the president's one. So I think when I think of the viability of these, I think of the president's the American Citizenship Act of 2021 first and foremost.
Yeah.
Also out there's the Meng amendments to the DHS yearly budget.
Yes.
So that's another legislative bit. It's basically an add-on to the budget for the Department of Homeland Security, which covers USCIS. And that amendment basically takes unused family-based and employment-based diversity visas and basically makes them available until they're used. They carry over from year to year to year. We talked about this, Sam, a while back, and one of the concerns, at least for folks who are the employment-based backlog, which is really the biggest one, is it basically provides those family-based green card holders get their visas back.
But the Meng Amendment, I think, was trying to get also all those visas back to the family.
Yeah, exactly.
So she's trying to take that all those and send them back to the family, which is honestly, I mean, there are arguments on both sides. Well, I mean, there's argument on both sides, but give them back and give me my 231,000 green card.
I'm perfectly happy to have them give them back to the family and give them to the employment. It's double dipping. It's not a problem for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, one thing we haven't talked about is that middle number. If we can go back to that screen.
It's about another precedent. Yeah. This again, going back to these numbers, we have 20, 30 years almost of unused green cards. Basically, green cards they didn't give out, and
sorry, I dropped the ball. Sorry, I didn't do my job. Year in and year out.
Whoops. Yeah, so we went through the first calculation, this 231,584. That's what, by executive action, they think the president could just by sign a paper and get back. Then there's the president's bill, the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. If that bill is version of getting back these green cards, you get 940,000 green cards back.
And that's a simple calculation of just adding the numbers. There's no multiply by 2. It's just basically saying, I'm going to give you the green card that we have not given for both family and employment to respective family and employment. Yeah. So the 940 is the number that combines.
Yes. So this middle number here, 339,206 is under this heading of available green cards under AC 21 recapture. There's no proposal out there right now that we know of for AC 21 based recapture, but it's an interesting number because there's precedent for it.
That's a straightforward addition. That's basically the green cards that we lost, the employment-based green card. There's nothing fancy about that number. And that's a true number that you can rely on. As a matter of fact, I need to correct it. The 940,699, that goes to employment-based. Because that number, that third number that the president is proposing, is calculating the overflow every year from family into employment that was never utilized. So that is a true 940,699 green card going to employment-based immigration.
They're unused, sure.
Unused.
Yeah.
The one in the middle, the AC1 recapture, that number is basically adding up all the unused employment immigration that they've dropped the ball on in a straightforward addition.
So the reason why we bring this AC21 number up, there's the little number, the Executive Action 1, the huge number, U.S. Citizenship Act 1, there's that one. There has been recapture of green cards based upon, as part of AC21, the American Competitiveness
Act of the 21st century.
Yeah. It's you guys out there have probably taken advantage of some aspect of AC21 before. If you have approved I-140 and extending your H-1B beyond 6 years, that was part of AC21. Well, part of AC21 was recapture of visas. And basically what this number said, this 339,206, if you apply it and the same formula they used to the AC21 to recapture some visas, and somebody picked that up and made it law right now, 339,000 visas you can recapture.
And I want to add that the AC21 recapture was a Republican sponsored and a Republican president legislation that was pushed by President Bush Jr. And so it is not a Democrat-Republican thing. It is really a common sense thing to do, is to recognize that recapturing these numbers is going to have a very positive impact on the economy.
Yeah, so I think we've pretty much hit up on all the legislation we wanted to. So
Yes.
There's U.S. Citizenship Act. That's the President Biden's, his personal pet project. That's what his administration's put out there. There's the Eagle Act, and there's the Meng amendments to the DHS bill.
Yes.
And what's your final thoughts on the subject, Sam?
Well, we're going to talk about litigation before we give final thoughts, or you want to
I
talk
want final thoughts on legislative action.
legislative action? I think the president one makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, if he's the president, he's supposed to get his party to rally behind him.
Well, it's not a party. It's bipartisan. Both parties. There's no disagreement between the Republican and Democrats on this.
Well, that's something I forgot about, though. The president's plan also has some things that Republicans might not want.
And that's where the issue. The problem is. Yeah. I mean, there's other things in the bill that dealing with undocumented immigration.
Yeah, DACA, new pass to green cards and citizenship for undocumented people, and you don't have to follow politics too hard to know that might cause some people to just throw up their hands and say unpassable.
Yeah, but all what you need, 10 Republicans?
Yeah,
give or take. We're not doing the political head count, but when it gets closer, we may have to have a session on that. If, for example, it'll be a fun one to have a live session when Congress is voting.
Do we want to have C-SPAN in the corner?
We'll have a C-SPAN on the corner, and we can give comments. That'll be a lot of fun, and hopefully it passes, right?
Yeah,
that will be a good story.
So I guess the whole baggage that comes with the president's bill is a reason why it's not such a terrible idea to keep an eye on these other smaller acts, because they could solve the problem without dealing with.
Right, but are they going to carry momentum?
That's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem.
Now, litigation.
Judicial branch, Sam. I'm going by branches of government. So we hit the executive, we hit the legislative, judicial branch.
Yeah, we have the Chakraborty versus USCIS case that was filed in Maryland, and it's a good lawsuit. Basically, it asks the judge to issue something called a writ of mandamus, which is in English a order by the court for the government to do their job that they are required to do, which they have failed to do. So it's a requirement to issue a writ of mandamus. It is also an alternative requirement to force the government to allocate the visas differently. And another requirement is to force them to count them next year and not discard the visa numbers, and also to declare that the USCIS has failed in its function to carry out its duty and responsibility. And I think there was also some kind of an injunctive relief of some sort that is required. A lot of strong legal action. It's a detailed lawsuit that was filed. There's about 130 Chinese and Indian plaintiffs in that lawsuit. It is not a class action lawsuit, and therefore it is likely that the plaintiffs will benefit first, and then others might benefit after if this really happens in a way that is positive for us. Brian, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, now you see, things have gone flip-flop here, Sam. I feel like you've given the technical explanation. I'm going to give the less technical one on this one. So preparation for this, we both did. We read that lawsuit. Essentially, if I wanted to sum it up, it's essentially the government's taking too long to approve these cases. So here's what we want the government to do: either approve them now or hold those decent numbers available for us into the next fiscal year. Don't let them be wasted.
Yes.
And they give tell some nice, not nice stories, sad stories about people who are being negatively impacted. I'm sure everybody out there has a story of why it's so bad to not get your green card in any sort of reasonable amount of time.
And it also lays out some numbers. One of the statistics they give in the lawsuit, which is the USCIS takes only 98 minutes to process a case, that the processing time right now is 27 months delayed. It lays out the history of how the government consistently delaying processing approvals. For example, they say in the lawsuit that in 2016, the average processing time was 8.1 months. In 2017, it became 11.1 months. In 2018, it became 12.8 months. And in 2019, it became 14.4 months. And in 2020, 27 months delay. So the progression of failure to adjudicate these cases, where it only takes 98 minutes.
Well, this is really kind of highlighting what I was talking about earlier. It doesn't get any better, and what's not helping that. The process. If every case takes them longer to process, that's another factor that's just making that backlog worse and worse and worse. Yeah. Aside from visa availability, you can never get the number. If it keeps on taking longer to approve cases, it's going to keep on longer to issue green cards.
And when that's going to happen, and more wastage and more longer time, it goes through the details. It's a well-drafted lawsuit, and obviously there's a lot of attorneys who are waiting and saying, we will jump in these lawsuits and file the lawsuits perhaps once we cross the first 100,000 wasted into next year. Other attorneys feel like the sooner you jump on it, the better. And other attorneys feel that it is not a good idea altogether to file it. I'm not in that camp. I'm in the camp of my personal opinion is that your case will be stronger once they demonstrated their failure of adjudicating the first 100,000.
The harm hasn't really happened yet effectively.
Yeah. And we filed a lot of these similar cases throughout my career. And obviously, litigation is not a guaranteed thing, but you got to sue the government when the government failed to act. It's simple as that. It is not fun. It is not cheap. And the results and the outcome is absolutely not guaranteed, but you just cannot sit idle. And that's my philosophy. And when we were involved with some of the H-1B litigation, some of the key litigation, really, our law firm was assisting, and a lot of the plaintiff came from our law firm on one of those key cases that had a great victory.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, you got to sue.
Yeah. When the conditions become intolerable, yes, you got to go after the government. I mean, I feel good about that case for the people. The people who have filed, the people who are plaintiffs in this case, those are folks who have already filed their I-45s, and because they've already filed their I-45s, there's a good chance. I mean,
and the part that is current.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Those folks are going to. I mean, that maybe those folks are going to get their green card sooner or later. We don't know what the visa. We know what the visa bulletin looks like for October 2021, and we know there's not going to be any sort of great retrogression or anything like that. If your priority date is current this month, it's going to be current in October as well, which means your priority date, your final action date, is going to survive the end of the wastage apocalypse.
Right.
We know those folks. If your priority date is current now, it's going to be current in this fiscal year, current at the beginning of this next fiscal year.
But it doesn't mean you're going to get your green card.
It doesn't mean you're
going to 27 months to process an adjustment of status.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it for 27 months on average.
The ones, what bothers me about these folks, they're the older priority dates. They're going to get their green cards. What makes me, my arm twitch, my hand turn into a fist is, what about the folks who haven't even gotten the opportunity to file it yet?
The wastage that caused the visa bulletin not to move forward as much as should have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a tougher lawsuit.
It really is, because how do you show if your priority date hasn't even become current? How are you supposed to show it would have been?
You need a statistician.
Yeah.
To show, and then also you need, it's a complicated calculation, and also you have to find a judge who's willing to take this very aggressive stance. This is not a simple stance for a judge to take.
Yeah, are most federal judges experts in immigration law?
Yes,
they have to become experts in it, but it's really complicated. I can imagine the government's counter argument is this as well. Their priority dates are still going to be current. These folks are going to get their green cards. Let us take our time. We're in the middle of a pandemic.
So when people say, "What's the likelihood of winning this lawsuit?" I tell them that's the wrong question they're asking.
Yeah,
it's not the right question. Obviously,
hope they win.
Well, I hope they win, but that's not the question. For me, number one, a lot of these cases, and we're obviously discussing in our office filing these lawsuits, but we're waiting until the next fiscal year because that, in our opinion, makes a stronger case. But to me, the question is, what's the likelihood that your case will be helped by? Because a lot of time, you may just get an approval. I had a situation, this has happened a decade ago, more than a decade, maybe 12, 13 years ago. A guy came to me and said, my citizenship application has been pending for 4 years with the government. He said, my wife got her citizenship. My kids got their citizenship. I'm waiting, and I've been waiting. I said, we got to file a writ of mandamus. It's very simple. It's a good case because it's an unreasonable delay, clearly unreasonable delay. He said, okay, he was suspicious that, this is going to work. So we went ahead and filed a writ of mandamus. Within 40 days, he got something in the mail to schedule him for the interview.
Now, when was this, Sam?
Oh, this is a long time ago.
See,
But it's an important story because the government does not change. Bottom line, this guy got his green card in his citizenship in less than 60 days. And why? Because we sued. Did we win the lawsuit? No. This lawsuit was dismissed. But he got his citizenship.
Yeah.
A lot of these people are going to get probably their green card approved. Yeah. And one way the government get rid of lawsuits.
Yeah. Somewhere out there, there's a government lawyer who picks up the phone and says, I have this nightmare of a lawsuit. It would really help me out if you could just take care of all these cases and make the whole thing moot. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Right.
And that often works.
Yes. So litigation could become big deal. I would say December, January of next year. And obviously, we will talk about that then in more details. So those are the three options.
Yeah.
What do you think the prospect of this issue resolved? 1, 2, and which of the three paths do you think it will be resolved?
I always like to give an interesting opinion, Sam, and I kind of believe in executive action at this point. I think immigration is such a hot button issue that it's really hard to get Congress to agree on anything. The president's plan for all the baggage we discussed, but these littler plans, we don't see those things move very, very often. So, if enough people go crazy and not go crazy, go sane, bring it to the attention. You bring up I favor executive action.
Yeah. I think that's probably a smart answer.
Yeah.
I think probably an executive action might solve that problem. It all depends. It all depends on what's going to happen next year. I mean, if we're having a serious pandemic problem, it may not happen by executive action. It may not happen by Congress. It may have to go to the court. So, but if the pandemic is under control, and the government now is having time to look at other problems, and this is a pressing problem.
Yeah.
This is a major number. Now, because of the large number of green cards that are being wasted, I honestly believe that there will be a solution. I don't have a prediction on which way. I don't think the court is going to be the best avenue, but I think the court is going to be an important player in keeping the pressure on. So filing lawsuits next year is going to be a big deal to keep the heat on. But it could very well be possibly congressional action or a...
well, as we discussed, they're all on the table.
Yes.
It's just a matter of, as we said in the beginning about executive action, all it does is take a piece of paper, and it doesn't even take that much. It takes the agency to decide. I think just put a piece of paper in front of the president.
You could be 100% right on that one. I'm buying it. I'm buying it.
I just think of what is I shouldn't touch my microphone like that. I think of what is the path of least resistance. What is the easiest path to something?
But how a congressional administrative action is going to sound when the agency is inept to handle, that's a major problem.
That's the great big challenge here. No matter what the solution right now, we have an agency that's grossly understaffed, as it seems. They can't complete their
4
work.
months to cash a check.
So no matter what solution, the very best. Avoid the wastage, great, but they still have to actually process these cases, and we're stuck waiting for that, no matter what.
Good news, bad news. The wastage is large. That's the bad news. The good news, because it's large, it will be resolved. That's my prediction. How? I don't know. I have no way of telling yet.
I will take resolution of the wastage, and it still takes them a long time to process the green cards, because long time to process the green cards is better than never process your green card at all.
Changing gears, COVID-19 now has become a requirement as part of the medical examination as of October 1st.
Yeah.
And the good news is if you filed your medical and sent it prior to October 1st, you're exempt.
Yeah. It's a COVID-19 vaccination.
Yes.
Yes. So
COVID-19 vaccination, correct.
They recently made the FDA approval for the Pfizer vaccine.
So there'll be new forms going to be coming out, and obviously you have to be vaccinated to be able to adjust your status, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We knew that's going to happen.
We were talking about this months ago, at least, thinking it's got to be on the table.
Which is excellent news.
Yeah.
All right. So let's take questions. This topic took more time than we thought, and let's see what we have.
Everything always takes more time than I think it's going to take, Sam.
Yes.
So we're just going to go through some questions, see what we got. Right here from Deepak. My priority date is June 7th, 2012, EB2, and my employer is not willing to downgrade. Will my priority date become current in fiscal year 2022 before December 2021? So
June 7, 2012. What do you think, Brian? I'd say it is possible.
So let's give everybody the baseline. The EB for September, the EB2 final action date is 9/1/2011. That's less than a year off.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we know about EB2 dates? Even Charles Oppenheim, who disappointed us terribly by saying Visa Bulletin is not going to move in Q1 of fiscal year 2022. He did say, he said the EB2 dates are going to move a little bit. And what we know about the EB2 dates is that they are held back because there's so many people in the EB2 who are stuck in the EB2 column because their I-140 EB3 has not been approved. When those folks get their I-140 approved in EB3, they'll move to the EB3 category. So I've been saying this like a broken record every time we have one of these things, that EB2 dates have to start moving faster. Everybody does, in fact, jump into the EB3 category. EB2 dates start to move faster.
EB2 dates will move at a rate of 1/3 of EB3.
You think?
Well, because of the numbers.
Yeah.
if they're going to approve one EB3 and one EB2, okay, so the ratio that's remaining is 3 to 1. 560,000 to 130, 140,000, whatever the number is.
Yeah, that's where the back. Yeah.
It's 2 to 1. So for every 3 days movement for EB3, there will be 1 day movement for EB2.
Fair enough. Well, we do know we do believe we're going to start seeing more movement in the visa bulletin at the beginning of the calendar year, probably around January. But also, Charles Oppenheim did say he would put some information in the November visa bulletin. So there's a reasonable chance we think it's possible that date could come up in fiscal year 2022.
Yes. So let's go to the next question.
Okay. So there's a question. November 2016 priority date. Any chance of it becoming current in EB3 or EB2? Presuming you're asking about the coming fiscal year. Unfortunately, no.
No, I don't think so.
Well,
he said not likely, remember?
Yeah, so 2 months back, Charles Oppenheim, if anybody's not familiar, he's the fellow from the Department of State who is the wizard of the visa bulletin. That's the term I'm going to use from him from now on, Sam. He's the visa bulletin wizard.
The visa bulletin czar.
The visa bulletin czar, that one's pretty good too.
Yeah.
The visa bulletin czar, and he said 2 months ago, he said that EB3, it was unlikely to get into 2016 in the next fiscal year, and EB2 was certainly
not happen.
Yeah.
So unlikely.
And you're talking November 2016. So we give
November into 2016.
Yeah,
I'm going to say probably not.
Yeah, it seems based upon anything he said, it's
yes.
It is not going to happen.
Sure.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yes.
So. This a question right on the topic we're on. So, what is the likely impact of green card wastage? Retrogression, no green card for some of the folks who are current now, or no slow movement of dates, or something else. So, retrogression, Sam. Let's go through them.
Well, retrogression, we were told he is not.
He's paranoid about it.
He's not going to retrogress, but there's nothing he can't control that. Obviously, his ability to project these numbers in a way, he has no ability. So he is going to try not to retrogress it.
Well, he can prevent retrogression by not moving the numbers forward that much. If he doesn't move them aggressively, he can't go, oops, I went too far.
Yes.
So
he tried not to retrogress, but is that possible? It is possible. Yeah, say it's the least of the other possibility. So that's the least likely, but it is not impossible. No green card for some of the folks who are current now. No green card. Well, that's same thing as retrogression. Another way of saying retrogression.
Well, I want to talk. You're right. It's to say I'm going to, but see, he tricked whoever that was. Tricked me. I think you say it a different way. I like that.
He's a smart guy, Gurish.
So
I like his questions.
If you're current now, we know that we have the September visa bulletin. It's available. It's online. And Charles Oppenheim told us that the October one is going to be identical. And we know, so wastage happens between the September and October visa bulletins. So we know that the wastage is not going to send people's dates backwards, which means people who are current now should be feeling okay.
But it's taking 26 months.
So that's, well, talk to me in December, January when we're realizing that they're not going to get these things approved.
So
and you start thinking about litigation.
Yeah, so that's where litigation comes into play that can change this equation for you next year, unless something drastic happens, which unlikely to happen.
Well, they need to, Sam, they need to start, I'm seeing they're saying they're approving more green cards. I will admit that I'm seeing it in our mail every day. They need to not do that in just, August, September.
They need to drop the interviews, man. They need to drop the interviews. Enough of this is stupid.
Well,
drop the interviews, issue the green cards.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, these folks have been here for a decade.
Drop the interviews.
A decade of exemplary employment.
If you're interviewing somebody, do site visitations. With employment, do something like that, right?
Yeah.
Issue the green cards. Yeah.
Well, no, we're seeing an uptick in H-1B site visits, Sam. You know what you do? You take those people, you take them out of
silly H-1B. Go after the green cards.
Oh no, it's the three-year H-1B. They got it. I mean, it is a topic we do often. Seminars for employers, and we were getting asked, "Hey, we're seeing an uptick in H-1B site visits. Why?"
It's a total waste of time. Get those guys in an office, let them file a review and approve adjustment of status.
Sounds good to me.
You know, there's about, what, 500 of those guys running around the country? Do the math. 500, okay,
Yeah.
times 40 hours, whatever the
I'm
math
bad
is.
at mental math, Sam.
Yeah, divided by 2 hours per case, so each one of them can approve 4 cases a day.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. They gotta allocate those resources.
Yeah.
So nowhere slow movement in dates. That's what we're seeing in Q1 of fiscal year 2022. That's what we're hearing anyway. We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
And or something else. Well, I think we kind of covered the
first. Or something else, file a lawsuit, and then things can change. And we're going to be talking about filing lawsuits next year once we go beyond October, because honestly, we feel that we just need to we're a lot more effective when there is a failure of the government on a monumental level.
Yeah.
Then you can go in and say, Judge, look what they did.
Yeah, they blew their chance versus they're gonna blow the chance. Yeah. When there's news headlines in the beginning of October that they wasted 100,000 green cards. Yeah, that's
Yes.
So moving on from Yogesh, what are the chances of days of filing to reach EB3 April 2015 and the upcoming year by the end of September 2022?
Possible.
So it's EB3 April 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said
it's possible.
He said EB3.
It probably get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's possible.
I mean, we're already at EB3 final. Yeah. Yes. I think there's a good chance of that.
Yogesh, you'll get your adjustment filed next year.
So from Sumit, I downgraded from EB2 to EB3, and my priority date is April 2014. Got EAD and AP approved.
Okay.
EAD and AP and approved I-140. What's your prediction on when the date will become current and chances of actually getting the green card?
Well, obviously, 11 to 27 months of filing is where the problem, Sumit. You are a recent filer of adjustment of status. If you filed in October, so October now, it's been 1 year, right?
Getting there, yeah.
And he's getting close to the date. I think he probably will become current here soon.
Yeah, I mean, EB3 final action date is 1/1/2014. April 2014.
You should get your green card next year.
So the only thing that's stopping Sumit from getting his green card is his priority date being current. His I-140 is approved, and that's the problem a lot of people are facing right now. So
the question is, what's going to happen? I mean, here are the reality. What's going to happen with the loss of visas, and how fast are they going to move? And is there going to be a massive wave of lawsuit where they're going to have to prioritize the lawsuit over other people? So
which is a great way to create another lawsuit.
Which is a great way to create another lawsuit. So there's a lot of dynamics, but under normal circumstances, I would hope to see Sumit receiving his green card by next year.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a long processing time. So, I mean, realistically, his priority date is about 3 months off from current, and we know we don't expect much movement in EB3. So, what you're looking to,
but 3 months is not too much. I mean, it's going to move second quarter.
The thing that the cloud that everybody knows that at the end of fiscal year 2022, if they don't change something drastically, you're looking at another pile of wastage, and that's in a lot of the questions here. People are worried about, what if I don't get my green card beyond at the end of fiscal year 2022, and that's when it gets really serious for those who have filed already, at least.
It may end up a situation where the moment you get current, you file your lawsuit.
Yeah.
Next year, the moment you get current, you file your lawsuit.
Yeah.
And because if you miss out, it may be 10 years before you get your green card. So it may be a situation where if Congress doesn't act, this is what you do. It doesn't hurt your case. There is absolutely no documentation of government retaliation or negative impact on your case if you file a lawsuit. Yeah. Just remember that.
That's what them doing that, the sort of thing is. Well, we'll get them taken to court and they'll get in trouble for it.
When we were involved in the H-1B litigation, when we sit down with the clients, even company owners, well, they're going to say, well, everybody got a skeleton in the closet. Nobody's perfect. My I-9 is not perfect. My H-1Bs are not perfect. I do the best I can, but I have an exposure. If I file a lawsuit, they come here and they tear me apart, and then they find 1 million violations. It doesn't work that way. They don't do that.
Yeah.
They do not do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's look at a question. Is the data we had help here? So that's 741,209 for EB2 India. So that wasn't just EB2 India. That was EB2 and EB3 India.
Correct.
The backlog. So that's combined.
With a projection of 84 years approval if on all of those cases.
So that backlog would be, I-140.
And that is, I think, as of last year, not counting 2021.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure, because this report came out last year, or earlier this year. They don't have this year's.
Yeah, and that's, it's significant, and it just goes up and up and up and up and up.
Absolutely.
So next one we got there. What would you suggest for July 2015 EB2 priority date? Should I wait to downgrade or change jobs if my date will not appear in next year?
I would downgrade. It
doesn't hurt you to have multiple.
You got to downgrade.
40s.
Yes, you got to downgrade.
I
don't think EB2 2015 we're going to be seeing it.
That is 5 years, 4.5 years off the final action date right now. Yeah. That's a long time. And
downgrade, my friend, and obviously join the crowd who will be waiting in frustration, but at least you have something.
Yeah, no, what do you get? What would you rather have? No pending green card, or the benefit of a pending green card that keeps you legal in the United States, EAD that lets you work for anybody you want, advanced parole that lets you travel without a visa? I'll take that time and time again.
Yes.
So here we are.
In my birth certificate submitted, my last name is mentioned initials, for example, RS, whereas my passport, the last name is Ram Singh. Will this be an issue? I have submitted this for I-485. When the name is not perfectly matched, you probably will get an RFE on that. So get ready to get your...
I want to tell, I have a little story. I was advising somebody just late last week, and they basically, their interview came up, and they decided they wanted to talk to an attorney, this guy right here, right before their interview, because they just wanted to see if they had any issues. And they just had me pour over their case. And I said, here's 1,001 things that can come up. And that was amongst the things that we talked about.
Yes.
And I told them, it's the government's also seen a lot of documents, from your country of origin. I think these folks were Indian as well, and they weren't asked about that during their interview. But what can you do? The easy answer is get some affidavits.
With the when you have an interview, you're dealing with officers who are family-based, immigration centric, and because of that, those are the things they look at.
Yeah.
When you don't get an interview, they don't raise this issue because the officer working in the service center, they've seen a lot of these things, and they focus more. Do you have a job? They think they've seen it. They're authentic. It's authentic. They're comfortable with it. So on an interview, I think it comes up more often.
Yeah. So my answer for Manoj here is: will it be an issue? No. They can issue an RFE, and they sometimes do. I find those usually come earlier in the process, but go get affidavits from people, parents who can explain it. Other relatives are good too. And if they ever bring it up, you can have those in your pocket.
You can hand them out. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's go this one.
Hi Sam, thanks for doing this. My pleasure. Can you please confirm if I can take medicals to Infopass appointment? The answer is yes, you can. Will the officer at Infopass appointment be able to attach medicals to my I-5 application? Thanks. If the file is at the local office, absolutely no problem.
Yes.
Now, I prefer to send things by mail, certified mail or medical, but if you go into an Infopass appointment and you're going, and if you can ask him to give you a receipt or something that he's received it from you or she's received it from you, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, getting those classic Infopass appointments. I think they actually technically eliminated the quote-unquote Infopass system. Getting an appointment in the local office is really more of a challenge there.
But if there's an interview, you can take it with you. You can mail it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's ways to. You can mail it, or you can bring it to the interview. That's generally what they expected and what they expect and want, because they issued that policy statement. They've been text messaging people saying, "Hey, we expect an RFE soon. Get your medicals in order." And they kind of left the impression they don't want you sending those separately without an RFE from that policy statement.
Right.
Let's keep on going.
Can you please give us some tips, do and don'ts at Infopass appointment? I think what you're meaning again is the appointment for interview appointment. I believe it's not Infopass. I think
maybe if that's if that's what they're talking. Okay.
So so let's take a moment about interview appointment. Number one, you got to review your case.
You sucked the number one right out of my mind. That's the number one thing.
And your attorney probably does the same thing, but we offer like 3 levels of service on how deep it is. Some people just want a quick review. Some people want to have a little bit more, a little bit more deeper look. And some people have questionable background that may need a lot more. So I'm sure your attorney will probably have the same service that can give you, but having somebody to look at it, especially if it's old, is a good idea. Yeah. So that's the number one. What's your number 2 tip, Brian?
Know what the problems are. Ultimately, one is review your case. Why do you review the case? Because it's very possible that you mess something up in there. I talk to people and they say, "Ooh, I forgot to tell you blah," and is that a problem for my interview? Odds are it's not a problem, but don't let it to be a problem. You can correct issues before you go into an interview. You can basically bring it up with USCIS before they bring it up with you. And so it's essentially know your problems and fix them before they become problems.
The one I would give is try to project why you were called. So that helps you kind of spend your energy on what they think the problem is. So if there is a new marriage, probably that's why. Or if there is a new employment, or there was an intervening employment. Yeah. So figure it out, trying to figure out, you could be wrong, but I mean, no problem being wrong, but say, I think they want me to talk to you because of this. Okay, well, let's really prepare for that.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to somebody, criminal issues, new marriage, changes in jobs. The person I was talking to late last week, they called me. They said, they asked about my job. Not really a problem. They had an intervening employer. This is one where they were with the I-140 employer. They left them for a while, and then they just got back on with the I-140 employer, and they were asking, about that. So,
any more tips?
Just prepare yourself. Just
here's one for you: dress as if you're going to a wedding. Put your tie on. Put your, I have a client of mine that I love the way he dresses. Remember, I see him and he just dresses. He's so sharp dressed. I love it. I mean, I love the way he looks. Dressed very sharp, clean, shave. Look good.
I always tell people, dress for the job you want. You dress for the job of, new permanent resident of the United States. Treat it like I always say, treat it like a job interview. You're trying to really put your best self forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. Unless they increase the staff, it's not going to happen. All right. The whole process of hiring a USCIS requires security clearances to prevent another 911 incident. Also, there's a labor shortage. Sure.
That's the challenge.
Well, but there are solutions. It's not going to happen, but they can allocate visas now. They can, by executive action, say that they are going to continue to allocate them next year. So yes, I mean, and also they can cut down the time of processing. Instead of 98 minutes, they should process one every 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Double or triple the production. Cut down on the interviews. Cut down on the stupid RFEs, with all due respect. I mean, there are some good RFEs and there's some dumb RFEs. Cut down on the dumb RFEs and get their darn cases approved.
Yes.
So yes, I mean, yes, you're right. Yeah. But there are solutions.
Badrinath here goes on for a little bit. So, can you outsource these jobs? I guess not as at all a huge risk to U.S. national security.
Oh yeah, they do outsource. I think.
I mean, some of the. Not
necessarily the review, but the copying and all the.
Yeah, they have all sorts of contractors running around.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's see what we got here. Assuming nothing improves for legal immigration with spillover available for the next year and estimated wastage, what do you think the what do you estimate EB3 December 2016 India possible in the next 5 years or so?
Well, honestly, any answer would be a prediction and a guess, but I would say in the next 3 years.
I think that seems reasonable. I mean, at the very least, the visa everything has been moved faster by the great availability of visas that is this last year and this year. There are more. It is going to move faster than it has been because more visas, more green cards are getting approved. So yes. Even if nothing good happens, take solace in the fact that more people are getting their green cards. Even if nobody fixes the wastage, which somebody's got to do something about this.
I think something will happen.
Yeah,
there's no way they're just going to just let it go.
Every time somebody gets a green card, it's one less person between you and your green card.
Yes.
Don't feel jealous of the guy who's a couple years ahead of you. Be glad he's done with the process, so you're just one step closer to the front.
Yes. All right, Badrinath. Number of Indians, Asian migration to the United States is second only to Middle Eastern countries, and hence the backlog. There isn't much immigration of Indians, Asians in other countries, so I would compare apples to apples. Well, immigration is immigration. We are per capita number 10 or 11 in the country. As a matter of fact, do you have that report with a number? It doesn't matter where you're coming from. It's the 7% for country limitation that we have, which basically you have a country that represent 17% of the world population, India, that receives 7% of the visa availability, capped at 7%. Not only that, but also you have a country that produces engineers and scientists and IT professionals at a rate of 10 times more than any other country. So apples to apples is immigrants, and we are behind immigration as Badri mentioned. As we take the next question, I'm going to look up the chart here to kind of share with you from our report. You want to jump on the next one, Brian?
Yeah, so what's the impact of Meng's amendment if it passes? I mean, if you go back and read this, it's sort of about, it's mostly about, making sure those families get the family-based green cards, which, again, I'm going to give the context that when it comes to family-based green cards, there's been such little issuance of them for the last year or so. Due to COVID-19, the consulate's been closed down, and that's where most of the family-based green cards get issued. That's what is responsible for the great big rollover into the into employment-based visas. Those unused green cards have made so many employment-based folks have been able to get their green cards filed. And if the plan is to basically keep those family-based green cards for those family-based folks, that's kind of a problem with that. I mean, there's also language in there that provides for keeping them for employment as well, but employments get used up quite a bit. So that's kind of my take on the subject.
Here are the countries. We, in fact, by sheer number, have the highest number of immigrants coming to our country than any other country, but not by per capita. Luxembourg is 10 times more than
Luxembourg is tiny.
Doesn't matter. It's a ratio.
No,
right?
I know.
Yeah. Switzerland is 4 times as much. Sweden is 3 times as much. Denmark, but you combine all of them, it adds up. Austria is 3 times as much. Canada is 2.5 times as much as we do per capita. Germany, big country, 2.5 as much, 2.3% of the U.S. So that's a big country. United Kingdom is a big country, 1.5 the U.S. immigration. So we're definitely behind, and we are 2, 3, 4. It's about 12 or 13 on the list.
So there's been a lot of talk in the comments about, the Meng amendments.
Yes, I heard that. So the Meng amendment has a very low chance of approval. I would give it 5% chance it's going to go anywhere. But if a Meng amendment type of solution is proposed, is going to be in combination of other solutions that address the employment-based immigration. They are not going to go and say vote something about take out 100,000, say we are going to pour them back, okay? And the law said these go to employment-based, and the employment-based does not get resolved. I don't think so. I think Meng amendment is an isolated legislation that does not address the whole picture, and I don't think it's going to have any much steam.
I just have such little faith in the legislative process.
Well, it's not a complete solution, and there's no such thing as a complete solution. There's always things that you miss, but this one kind of very one-sided, in my opinion, that does not really do it justice. Yeah.
Got a question here. Any upgrade dates on the H4 EAD premium processing? The regulatory agenda indicates that the rule is slated for release in September 2021. The regulatory agendas, what was on the regulatory agenda for, the 4 years of the prior administration? It was rewriting the H-1B regulations, getting rid of the H-4 EAD. None of those things ever happened.
Yeah.
Government, those regulatory agendas are very high idealed, but they just don't happen. And I'd love to see it. For anybody who hasn't been following that, I mean, it's really upsetting, the EAD processing times. They only allow you to file an EAD 6 months out. And how long does it take to get one approved? I think it's like 8 to
9 months. Or something.
It's at least 8 months, meaning you're guaranteed to lose your employment authorization. However, with processing times like that, I mean, it goes to a matter of agency staffing. Premium processing, I don't understand how, premium processing, I guess they're getting more money and they can better staff their agency.
Right. So do you say that the Meng Amendment will pass? No, it will not pass. That's Dinesh.
Yeah.
But they have already given green card based on spillover. Will they take these green cards back? They're so far behind. They only approved 70,000 green cards out of the 140,000 limit. They haven't even fulfilled the entire employment-based green card to get into the spillover.
Yeah, there's no green cards. And one's issued in people's hands. They're not coming back.
And there's no green cards taken from anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam, have you ever heard of a green card being taken back from somebody?
Well, there has been, but it's for fraud, misrepresentation, and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But not because of legislation. This is not something that's not going to happen. Meng's bill EB3 for India. So in current scenario, Meng's bill EB3 for India. I'm not sure I understand the question. It's not going to pass.
Will it harm EB2, EB3?
Well, you got a bigger problems. Congress cannot even get. I mean, USCIS cannot even get to the spillover, let alone. So you got that problem. Also, you got the fact that the Meng's amendment is not going to pass. Yeah.
So that's. Bajinath keeps on. He's got some commentary on that. So I'm gonna keep on moving along here.
Sure.
How many employment-based green cards were issued in 2005? So we actually have the chart here.
Well, do we have how many issued? How many not issued? We have how many not issued, so you can reverse it. Do the math.
But 2005 might be one of those years where
it's a great year for USCIS. In 2005, they've only wasted 4,000 green cards for employment-based.
So you'd have to.
So 135,000 approximately.
Well, yeah. Well, that's 4,000.
Oh, that's family.
4,000.
So employment, they've used all of them.
Yeah, and was 2005 one of those years where they increased the number because of like the AC-21, the recapturing of.
I think there was a recapture rule there that.
That was a year. Unfortunately, that number is going to escape us for the moment.
Yes.
So. Let's see what we got here. Oh boy, lots of. Here we are. So have you seen any I-140 downgrades applied in October 2020 approved with normal processing, not premium? Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
It started surprising me when I've seen them, but yeah, they're getting approved. So don't lose hope on that front.
Yeah.
Going to keep on going. So what are the chances of reaching ED3 filing date May 2015?
Possible.
And when?
This year possible. The next fiscal year possible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible.
That's what we have heard.
Yep.
Yeah. Great question here. Can we travel overseas outside the U.S. while our AP/EAD is pending? In the case AP application gets denied, will EAD still process regularly?
Well, he answered his own question.
Yeah.
Is it Tahesh?
Tejas B.
Yes. Well, you've answered your own question. Obviously, the advanced parole is getting denied if it's pending.
I want to make sure everybody.
The initial one. The initial one.
If you leave the country while that advanced parole is pending, you will have your advanced parole denied. They will send you an RFE or a NOID saying, "Hey, we saw you left the country. Either you didn't, or we're going to deny the case."
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the employment authorization document, it continues, no problem.
Yeah. When people accidentally stumble across this rule, they just file another advanced parole, and when they get back, and you're good to go.
Correct. My priority date is July 2014 EB2. In 2014, EB2 to EB3 downgrade, waiting for medical RFE, I-140 approved, and EAD card received. Wonderful. Any chance of priority date becoming current by end of this year, December 2021? Well, first of all, do you recommend to wait for the RFE on the medical, or would you send your medical now?
You can send them in. It's
so you would recommend you send the medical now?
Well, the USCIS doesn't want them, but they're taking them, obviously, because we've been sending them.
Well, they're good for 4 years now.
Yeah.
That may avoid an RFE.
Yeah.
So that, and also trying to, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing it after October 1st with the COVID-19 vaccination, but before it gets complicated with a new form.
Yeah, that's
true.
I think it's, the requirement is, well, yeah, I'll spare that conversation.
Yeah. So you can get the medical out, avoid the RFE. July 2014.
Final action date EB3 is versus January 20.
Yeah, it can be done.
Well, becoming current by the end of the year, December 2021?
Yes.
That's only months from now, Sam. EB3 is not moving.
Oh, by the end of this year, I think he means by the end of next year, right?
No, he says by the end of this year, December 2021, meaning.
Well.
Charles Oppenheim said no movement
the first quarter
in Q1, so that doesn't seem likely in my book.
But a few months after that, possible.
Yeah. We expect to see movement on the visa bulletin in January, February.
Yes. All right. So we are going to take 2 more questions.
Okay. These are ones where okay. So I'm primary applicant, and my I-45 receipt has a blank priority date. Is this a problem? Do I need to do anything? It's an interesting one, but ultimately it's not something I'm worried about.
I'll just do an inquiry on it. But that's an interesting question. I would. Well, is it current or is it not current? Is the question. And obviously, if it's not current, you got nothing to worry about. But once it becomes current, I would definitely issue a ticket.
You can put in a service inquiry with USCIS called a typographical error, and odds are their response is going to be, "Oh, we'll fix it when we approve the case," and that'll be it.
If you're not current, don't worry about it. If
I see your point. Basically, if they don't know if they don't really have their records good as to my priority date, that could mean they
may not get into it.
Get into your case.
Yeah. All right. So one last one, guys. Brian, you choose it. You choose what case?
Okay.
What question?
Oh boy.
I think you should go random.
Oh, that's how I'm going. I'm just scrolling and stop. I'm stopping here.
Right there.
I'm stopping here.
All right. Arun Kumar, I have downgraded to EB3 and filed concurrent 485. No receipt number for over 10 days. Oh, that's no problem. 10 days, my friend. Are you kidding me? Is this delay reasonable? Yes. 10 days is not a problem. Or shall I upgrade to EB3 premium right away to get some response?
So,
So
you're concerned. It's been 10 days, no receipt. It's been expect to be wait a little while longer. They're a lot better than they were back in October 2020, but still takes them a while. You want to know if your case has been taken by USCIS? Check your bank account. If you cut the checks for your case, they will eventually cash your checks. And when they cash your checks, they sometimes will put a receipt number on the back of the check. So if you can go into your bank records and find, your canceled copy of the check that they've sent back, you may get some information there.
Unless the employer paid for the filing fee for the I-140.
Talk to your employer.
Yes, but don't worry about it. 10 days is not a problem. Hope you guys enjoyed our show. We have not figured out what we're going to be talking about next week, but to get the most updated information, don't forget to subscribe. You will get most updated information here from us. We appreciate your subscribing so we can let you know. And we are going to probably bring about current event moments. So if there's a big change in the law or something happened, we may just go live right away and talk about it immediately.
Well, let us know what you want to hear in the comments, because if you look at our last streams, I'm the very same Brian Burke who comments in those comments. I like to read what you guys have to say. It's let us know what you want to hear about, because Sam and I spend the better part of a week going, what do you want to talk about? What do you think's a good topic? So it makes things easier on us.
But the other issue is the discussion you and I had about, if there's a breaking event, we want to go live right away and talk to people and update them on the spot. If you're subscribed, you will get that announcement out of the regular Monday presentation. So subscribe. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned a couple things. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
And a week.
Yes, a week before the weekend. You're ahead of yourself.
I know. I'm ready for